Hello, I'm Rabbi Elton from the Great Synagogue in Sydney, and our personality today is Raabi Yaakov ben Meir, known as Rabbenu Tam, born in 1100 and died in 1171. We discussed Rashi a couple of weeks ago. Now Rashi had no sons, he only had daughters. And each of those daughters married a great Torah scholar, one of the students of Rashi. One of those was a man called Meir, and he had several sons, one of whom was called Yaakov. And that's our personality today. He was known as Rabbenu Tam because his name was Yaakov, and in the Bible, Yaakov, Jacob, is known as Ish Tam, a wholesome or perfect person. And that became the nickname, the affectionate name, of Raabi Yaakov, known therefore as Rabbenu, our teacher, Tam, the perfect or the ideal one. He was one of the leading members of what's known as the Tosafist community, or the Tosafist intellectual movement. As I said when I discussed Rashi, his work in standardizing the text of the Talmud was groundbreaking in its day. And that meant that later scholars could compare this passage and that passage in different parts of the Talmud and try and see if they were perfectly compatible or could be reconciled. If the text was still in doubt, that was a much less easy operation to undertake, because you weren't sure if you had exactly the right text in either case. But once the text was fixed, you could compare side by side two discussions of the same topic in different places and see how they matched up. And the tasks that the Tosafists, led by Rabbenu Tam, set for themselves was to reconcile all the different areas of the Talmud, all the different discussions. And so, if you look at a standard page of Talmud, on the inside of the page you have Rashi's commentary, and on the outside you have the Tosafot, the additional comments which carry on the intellectual work of Rashi. They sometimes argue with Rashi, he argues with his grandfather, but that's merely part of a wider enterprise of making sure the entire Talmud is consistent with itself. This can sometimes lead to slightly extraordinary conclusions or mental gymnastics, and that's familiar to anybody who studies the Baalei Tosafot, and some have become embodied in the tradition as it's come down, and some remain simply suggestions or intellectual exercises as one goes through the pages of the Talmud. Now the Tosafot was a long-standing project which took several generations, but nevertheless Rabbenu Tam remains a very powerful voice, along with his nephew Rabbenu Yitzchak, the Ri, on each and every page almost of the Talmud itself. In addition to his presence in Tosafot, he also wrote a standalone work known as Sefer Yashar, which contains his discussions and legal opinions. That unfortunately has become corrupted over the years. It's very hard to get a good and clear version of the Sefer Yashar, which means the straight book, of the book of the straight, and it's also very difficult work to study, even if it has a perfect text. And so his main contribution to our intellectual life is through the pages of the Tosafot on the Talmud itself. He argues in two famous cases with his grandfather, amongst many more less well-known cases. The two primary cases that many people know about are the position of the mezuzah on the doorpost of a house. Rashi thought it should be upright, Rabbenu Tam thought it should be horizontal, and so Ashkenazim now put it at a slant in order to satisfy both of these great rabbis' opinions. The other difference of opinion was over the tefillin. The tefillin of the head and the arm contain the scrolls in a particular order, and Rashi and Rabbenu Tam disagreed over the correct order. In fact, there is a legend that when he was a little boy, Rabbenu Tam was 5 when his grandfather died, he tried to knock the tefillin off his grandfather's head, and this was taken as a sign there'd be a dispute to come. And indeed, some people today, particularly amongst the Hasidim, put on both Rashi tefillin and Rabbenu Tam tefillin with the scrolls in a different order in order to satisfy both of their opinions. So his presence is still with us intellectually, and also in many ways in a practical sense. Every time you see a mezuzah on the wall at a slant, you can think not only of Rashi, but also of Rabbenu Tam. Thanks for joining.